Hi, I'm Miss Rosie, and I'm back with Lines, Lines, Lines Part 2. Today we're going to think about lines in art. And lines are such an important part of art. It's hard to find a piece of art that doesn't have lines in it. And we're also going to get to make our own art today. So we're going to make a beautiful non-objective composition using lines. And we'll get to materials and things that we might need for that a little bit later. Right now we're going to think about all the different kinds of art that has lines in it and how the artist used lines in different ways. So another place that we can notice a lot of different kinds of lines is in artwork. You can see lines in artwork of buildings and people, trees, and animals. And you can also see lines in non-objective art, like this artwork called Harama 2. This artwork is a line in motion. Winding, curving strips of metal painted in bright, dynamic colors forcefully carry the motion and excitement of professional racing. By racing, we're talking about car racing. The artist titled this work Harama 2. Harama is the name of a race car, and this artwork looks like a fast car zooming all over the place, doesn't it? Maybe we can title our artwork too today. So let's talk about a couple of different kinds of ways to make art for a minute. One way is called representational, and representational art is realistic. It shows what the artist was thinking of, and you can see that it looks real. So another type of art is abstract art. And abstract art can be of something real, but the artist plays with shapes and lines and colors to change it so that it doesn't look exactly real. Like in this painting of this woman, it's called Weeping Woman, and you can tell that she's sad, she has some tears, and you can tell that it's a woman, but it probably doesn't look like a lady that you've seen walking down the street. At least I hope not. And the other kind of art that we're going to work on today is called non-objective art, and it's sort of a form of abstract art because it also doesn't look real. The last artwork that we were talking about, called Harama 2, is a really good example of non-objective art. The artist is really using lines and shapes and colors, and that's kind of all the artist is using. It doesn't really represent a person or a scene or an object. And so this one was about car racing, but you don't actually see a car in there or a racetrack or a race car driver or anything like that. That's up for you to fill in with your imagination. And it can be a very fun and expressive way to make art. And all the images we've been looking at may be subject to copyright protection. Now that we're going to start the project, you'll need a couple of materials. You're going to need 3 sheets of paper. It can just be white copy paper if you want, or some kind of drawing paper. And then any kind of writing utensil, a pencil or a ballpoint pen or even a Sharpie. And you could also get a pair of scissors if you have some handy. Now we want to review in the book all of the lines that the first straight line became. And one of them was he jumped in humps, and he also twirled in whirls, and he pointed his joints, and he creeped in heaps, and he sprang in rings. So for this first piece of paper, we're just going to do a line sampler. We're going to remember all of the different lines that were in the book, and we're going to put them on this paper so that we have something to refer to when we make our artwork. At the very beginning, they were all 3 of them straight lines. So I'll start out drawing a straight line. And then he jumped in humps. We call that a wavy line. And then he twirled in whirls. Whoop, 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 whoop. And sometimes we call that a curly line. He then creeped in heaps. And sometimes we call that a bumpy line. Then he pointed his joints. Remember those sharp lines that he made? And we might call that an angled line. We could also do a zig, zag, zig, zag, zig, zag, zig, zag line on our sampler for that sharp kind of movement that he was making. And then he did springing in rings. Whoosh, 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 whoosh. We might call that a loopy line. And then we had that cool dashed line when the director was seeing him from across the street. And it went doot, 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 doot. And that's a dashed line. So we have a lot of lines to work with right now. Now with our second sheet of paper, we're going to just need half of it. So we're going to fold it in half. Sometimes we call this hamburger style. Okay, so don't fold it the long way like that. Sometimes we call that hot dog style, like a hot dog bun. I'm going to fold it the short way. And that way I can see where the middle is. And then I can cut along that line. And I will have half a sheet of paper. If you don't happen to have any scissors handy, you can fold the paper and tear it along the crease. And the crease is this folded part, but you have to give it kind of a sharp crease between your nails on your thumbs and pointers. And sometimes I open it and I fold it the opposite direction and crease it again. And then you can just hold one half and then gently tear the other half away so that you have two halves. And now I'm going to put the smaller paper on top of the larger paper, pretty much in the center, although it doesn't matter too much if it's perfectly lined up. And I'm going to use this like a template. That means I'm going to use it as a tracer. So I'm just going to very gently go around the edges. You can do this with a pencil or a ballpoint pen or really anything. I'm doing it with a Sharpie because I want you to be able to see really easily what I'm doing. Okay, and then when I take this off, I'll have a rectangle in the middle of a larger rectangle. And now I have my rectangle traced, and I'm going to make a composition within this rectangle. And I want to be really aware of the edges. There's 1, 2, 3, 4 edges, and 2 of them are long and 2 of them are short because it's a rectangle. And I'm definitely going to have my sampler handy, and I'm going to make a composition with at least 5 different lines. I'm going to start with a loopy line. Whoosh, whoosh, whoosh. And as you can see, I touched 2 of these edges. I touched the bottom towards the left and I touched the top towards the right, but I'm not really pre-planning it. I'm just using my imagination and I'm just thinking about what line I might want to do next. Maybe I'll do a zigzag. Since this one's diagonal, maybe I'll do an up and down. Zig, zag, zig, zag, zig, zag. And then I think I will do a straight line. And I'm going to do a horizontal straight line. And I'm not going to go all the way to the edge this time. I touched this edge on the left, but I didn't go all the way to the right. Let's see, what else could I do? Maybe a bumpy line. So I'm going to do a bumpy line that maybe starts right here. And I'm going to do it diagonal, but going the other way. And I'm going to touch at least one edge. I went actually touched right here in the corner that time. So that's 1, 2, 3, 4. I need at least one more line. And I think I'm going to do a dashed line. And I'm going to start at the top and I'm going to keep going. Do, 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 do. And I'm going to touch 2 edges. So at least 3 of my lines are touching edges, 2 edges. The dashed line, the loopy line, and the zigzag line are touching 2 edges. And the bumpy line, and the straight line are not touching two edges, they're only touching one. So now I can think about giving my artwork a title. And I could just look at it for a little while and see if it reminds me of anything. Maybe my title could be based on one of the lines that these lines make, one of the words that the lines make. I could turn it this way, I could turn it upside down, just see which way it looks best. And yeah, I kind of like it like that because that zigzag's reminding me of a mountain. And then maybe there's some weather coming in like there is right now when I look out my window. It looks kind of windy and cloudy. And maybe these are different kinds of air currents. So maybe I'm going to call this one Zig Zag Storm. And you can also color in your composition if you choose to, if you have some colors available. I like to use crayons with this project because they're nice and bright and they don't cover up the black lines that I already drew. And also it's easy to color in big areas with crayons. I like to color in at least 2 shapes with each color. So I started in my upper left-hand corner and then I'm picking another area where I can use that pinkish red. And then I'm going to use a little bit of this really pale green. It's a little bit hard to see, but I'm also going to use that in 2 areas. 2 areas that are not right next to each other. So I'm trying to move around that composition and spread those colors out a little bit. The other thing I do with my crayon is I sometimes use my coloring up and down. So right now I'm coloring up and down, but sometimes I'll color on a diagonal to get in between and really get up to the edge of the next shape and really get into all those little corners. And you can use your line directions in your coloring, up and down, side to side, to color in the whole shape. The other thing you can do that's fun is with at least a couple of your shapes, if you want to, you could create a pattern. So I'm going to do some stripes, and I'm going to make an AB pattern with purple and another color, but I haven't decided on the other color yet. So I'm just going to draw those lines with the purple, and I'm going to color in every other stripe. Kind of reminds me of the shirt I'm wearing as I film this video. And then once I get done with the purple, I can decide what other color I want to use. And then I've decided to add orange for my B part of the AB pattern. So I'm going to fill in every other stripe with the orange. And then I want to remember to use it in another area of my picture. I made the lines horizontal this time instead of vertical, but I'm still going to use the orange, and then I'm going to go back in with my purple so that it's still an AB pattern using orange and purple. And so you want to continue on. This shape right here that I'm working on seemed really big, so I kind of cut that into 2 shapes. And then I don't know if you can see that there's a very light tan color on that shape, and I just felt like that shape kind of needed something. So I'm going on top of it with a dark blue crayon, so you can create patterns by overlapping on an area that's already colored. But I did have to press down really hard. And then I wanted to remember to put those blue curved stripes on my other little tan shape, even though it's real small. Now that this one's done, I would like to title it, and I'm just turning it around like I did the black and white version, just to see which direction I like it. And I think it's because of that green and gray pattern. It's making me think of a reptile, like a snake or a lizard. There's a lot of lizards around my house. And instead of leaping lizards, I'm thinking loopy lizard, because it has that big looping line in the middle. Thank you so much for joining me for Lines, 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 and thank you for making your own artwork. That is every art teacher's dream. It's to see what you make. And we love seeing how differently everybody makes their art project. Everyone was given the same directions, and they were pretty simple, 5 different lines and touching edges and things like that. And but the way you do it is just unique to you, and that's so important and beautiful. As you go forward, I also hope that you can name 5 or 6 different types of lines. And as you're naming them, you might see that you have a different response or a name for a line than someone else in your class. And again, that's fine. I might say a wavy line is wavy, but you might see that it's curvy. And lines can have different kinds of names. You might even come up with a name that we've never even heard of for a line. And maybe that could become part of your title. So have fun with the naming of lines. There's really no one right answer with that. As you go forward, also notice lines in your life, in your everyday life, in artwork that you see, and in artwork that you do. In all the projects that you do from now on, they're probably going to involve lines, whether they're 2-dimensional or 3-dimensional, and it doesn't matter in what material. They might be in crayon or they might be in some watercolors later on. So just pay attention to lines. They're really important and fun and a great way to express yourself in your art.